All right. Good evening, everybody. As I had mentioned, we're going to be talking about basically the BS, the big skinny of how shit works. All right. And what I mentioned was the universal principle of incommensurability, which, if you want to learn more about, it's basically, I've done a couple of videos on it. It's basically how stuff works, how stuff happens. It is the uh, an expression of the eternal impermanence of reality. I think that might be a way to put it. But it's how shit works. It's how shit works, and everything works this way. Uh, Going back to science, why science is important. Essentially, it's science as we know it now is a religion, right? But it's been bastardized, just like all religions have. They've all been watered down. They've all been changed. They've all had garbage put into them that's just resistance trash. The fact of the matter is that there is one force, and there is force and resistance, and that is all of reality is force and resistance. And that's what the universal principle of incommensurability says. So, and first off, I'm gonna tell you guys this. If you're new here, I smoke, and sometimes I smoke cigarettes, but not all the time. A lot of times I just smoke a pipe, and this is a Rossi church warden pipe with a acrylic stem and a briar bowl. And church wardens are nice because you smoke them, and then the smoke cools off as it goes through this long stem, and then it just tastes amazing. And church wardens came supposedly, where church wardens came from was the towns used to have a church in the center, and there would be somebody that would always guard the church so it didn't get burned down or didn't catch on fire, because that church was always open for people, and it is what it is, and somebody was always tending to it, and they would smoke a very long pipe and sit by a window with their pipe sticking out the window. And that's where the long stem, probably much longer than this, came from. So I don't know how they lit it or kept it lit, but that's the story of where a church warden pipe or a wizard pipe comes from. But I tell you what, the vanilla, I'm smoking Mac Baron vanilla tobacco and mixed with a Cavendish, and it's just beautiful. I love it. So anyway, the thing about tobacco, I want to tell you, you don't inhale this, and it's not filled with the additives that like a Marlboro is, or just the nasty cigarettes that are out there on the market. Tobacco has been smoked for thousands and tens of thousands and even hundreds of thousands of years, right? And just in the last 60 years, it causes cancer right after they started putting chemicals in it. But anyway, that's part of the deception. And I just did a video on pharmakia, which is the deception. And I'm going to do a follow-up on that. And this is about how shit works. And a lot of the times you get the question as to why. Why lie? Why deceive? Why would they lie to us? Don't they want us to know the best? Because isn't it in everyone's best interest that everybody knows? No. It is in your best interest that you know. And actually, what it is that you need to know is actually extraordinarily simple. It's extremely simple. There is one force. The entire world that you live in, we talk about, I've got videos on the ether, because the ether is real, it exists. That's what makes up your reality. And videos on flat earth. We did a video with Kelly Knighting, the sumo wrestler, and Flat Earth Dave. And, we talked about the flat earth, and Kelly's, I talk to him often. He's still looking at it, but Kelly and I, we've had our conversations offline, and I definitely think that there's a lot of flat earth stuff out there that's just not true. That's just garbage. And it's fine. It can be garbage. I really don't care. I just don't want to be involved in the garbage. So I don't want to be involved in the garbage. So, you know what? And my buddy, Intellectual Ketchup, Jake Jones, he feels the same way. So I'm going to read to you. So I sent Jake Jones a message earlier. And I'm very lucky to have Jake as a friend, because he lets me sort of mentally vomit. And it's a gross word, but sort of like throw up in his lap ideas, and then we can fight them out and hash them out. And, sometimes that goes on for months between the two of us, but that's okay. You should not come to large ideas easily. But I sent him this today, and I'm going to kind of go through this and paraphrase this. And this it does tie into pharmakia, it does tie into the deception, but this will help you to understand why. I cannot tell you personally exactly why. I can help you to understand why. That makes sense. You can understand natural order, if you can understand incommensurability, if you can understand that everything is created by one force, everything is created by a force, then you can understand why. Pretty soon I'm going to get into that a little bit deeper, but tonight it's going to be fairly, light for me anyway. Light. I know light and big skinny Matthew don't necessarily go hand in hand. It's a tough thing sometimes because I'm not the best at explaining complex ideas, and that's just maybe I just don't understand them as well as I think I do. But I've heard it said, and I think it's true. If you can't explain something simply, then you don't understand it. So I'm going to do my best to explain this simply. I started off my message because I was sitting there and I was just kind of meditating and thinking, and it just came into me that separation, or the illusion rather of separation, isolates the crown. And the crown is the genesis of consciousness. The crown being your keter. So when you are, so we understand the physicality of how life is created. A male and a female do their thing, they push them together. And the masculine and the feminine energy create life. But there is a process that life goes through for a season while it's being created. And this is also part of the nature of reality, is that you all have to go through that process, because that process is continuing to bring you forward and continuing to create not only your consciousness, your physicality, your energy, but the world around you, because you are a part of the world around you. The world around you changes, then you fundamentally change. There is no way to combat that. That is how it is. So the illusion of separation is where we become conscious, or at least have the illusion of consciousness and the illusion of separation. The second your first cell is birthed from the union of masculine and feminine energy, you begin to become a transient phenomena, see incommensurability, based on the permanent creative source. And that permanent creative source is the union of masculine and feminine energy. When masculine and feminine energy go back into one, they start creating. Boom, boom, boom. The creative source, God, the source of all life, has to be masculine and feminine, has to contain both of those. And if it does, if the creative source itself does not contain both of those, then there would have to be another source. It all comes from that union, from that whole complete circle. The gnosis of consciousness, or the genesis of consciousness, is entangled in that. And there is an intention that must come from this creation first, of whether you are male or female. And there might be arguments and there might be weird things, but for 99.9% of us, you're a dude or you're a woman. Period. As you enter into this world through the birthing process, your past life in the womb ends. You die. You die a death. You leave a place where your consciousness changes. The air you breathe, and your environment changes, and you will never enter that place again. That's a death. But then with that death comes immediate birth into this world in which we live, in which we're in. If you take a crystal and you break it apart, or you bang them together, it creates light. Because what happens, are pieces that crystal break off, and it creates a tiny little dielectric field. And that dielectric field creates a sonic perturbation, and boom, creates a spark. Just like when you take a piece of flint and you hit a piece of flint with metal, which will break pieces of that flint off. Eventually, you see a spark. It's not that metal that's sparking, it's the flint. It's the rock, it's the crystal that's sparking. Spark, 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 spark. That's how fire was created, with crystals, not with rubbing wood. I mean, you can do it that way. You can do it that way because it's intention and it's pressure. Again, how shit works, but that's not where it originally came from. Those are all attributes of where it originally came from. Because it basically, what breaks off has a negative charge, and what stays, it has a positive charge. And when that negative charge and the positive charge start to break apart, they start to pull back at each other, even though they're going to hopelessly go apart and one's going to flutter off and die because it's just trash. There's a spark. There's crystals all around us. Caves are full of crystals. The earth is a crystal. It is. Light is consciousness, and lack of light is darkness. And darkness is also lack of consciousness. It's a very simple principle. You either are or you are not. I think, therefore I am. Once you reach the point of birth and you breathe in oxygen around you, your ego starts to inhabit your vessel, the vessel of your body that you live in. We discern our new quote unquote separate state through our lower sensory perceptions alone. As they are all awakening, we begin to come to a place where we start to transform ourselves into a creative transient in our own right. Now, when that happens through deception, through sorcery, through pharmakia, there is a resistance to this. And that resistance starts to try to consciously tell you that you're not. Now, one of the ways that language deceives us is I say resistance and we think, I knock on the back of my pipe and the back of the pipe resists the force that I'm putting on there, and that ends it. But that's actually not true. You hear that noise? There's a sonic frequency that pushes through this resistance and continues on. Sound travels through all mediums except a vacuum. Vacuums don't exist. When you create a vacuum, just like you would do with a big tanker trailer, it crushes under the pressure. It can't exist. Space can't exist. Something with no, attributes is what space is supposedly is, and it can't exist. So there is no separation. You are not separate from your mother. You're not separate from your father. You are a piece of them. You are not separate from me. You are not separate from anything around you. You are a conscious perturbation in the medium. That means you are a part of the consciousness. Now, the resistance has its own consciousness as well. It's a consciousness of resistance. And part of that resistance is to pull you away from the source. Part of resistance is to pull you away from truth, period. So it's not a personal thing. It's natural order that resistance happens. Because without that resistance, there wouldn't be life. That's the thing. If I were to turn on a high pressure fire hose and then hold this hand up in front of the water, as the water hits my hand, there will be space here that stays dry because it moves the water, because it creates resistance. But the other end of that is true, is that eventually that water will wear my hand down and kill it. And my hand will be, that fire hose will tear your flesh off if the pressure was high enough, right? But over enough time, my hand goes away. Eternity is not permanent. It's eternally changing. Death becomes crystallized. Once we start to become deceived, we spiritually start to become crystallized in our own right. And we start to become part of that resistance. Through the beginning of our universe to the end, the beginning of time until the end of time, we are part of a consciousness that is repeating its own pattern. We die, we live, we're born, we die, we live, we're born, in different vessels throughout different epochs of time. In the process of this, weans out all of the shit. It takes all the shit away. This is no different spiritually than it is physically. What happens is there's a spiritual and a physical vortex that want to pull you down, pull you down. But as you hit a crystal and it breaks in half and the parts of the crystal fall off or negatively charged, they're being pulled down. If that crystal is being held by your intention and your consciousness, and you stay a part of that, boom, you're good. The Bible says, if God is with me, then what can be against me? The answer is nothing. But it's nothing if you replace the word God and you put in natural order, how shit works. You can call it God, that's fine. You can call it Yahweh, you can call it Jehovah. But one of the parts of the nature of how shit works is that you don't have the capacity to fully understand that which created you. You're never going to fully understand it until you're back connected to it in a more significant manner. And that is just illusion. Because the reality is everything around us is literally just holographic. All matter that is solid is nothing more than an attribute of the properties of a magnetic field. Gravity, the attribute of the properties of a magnetic field. It's actually very simple, and we're going to do a little bit more, exploration into this. But within a magnetic field, you have centrifugal force. You have dielectric motion, which means motion going in two different ways. And that motion creates a frequency, by the way. Kind of like rubbing your hands together. It goes in two different ways. That frequency creates a perturbation. That perturbation creates light. It's all scientific. It's all provable. It's all demonstratable, and it's all true. And when you understand the world from this point of view, everything falls into place. Everything makes sense. Everything. So, folks, I'm going to leave you for this evening. Oh, actually, wait. No, I'm not going to leave. I have one thing I want to share with you. This is how a cell splits. And we were taught this is the nucleus. And then that nucleus starts to split and become two nucleuses. Well, there's no dichotomy in nature, so this of the two is a product. This is not actually what it looks like. This is a conceptual diagram. Understand, concepts are to teach principles. They're not absolute. Concepts teach principles. Principles are absolute. Concepts are teaching and learning tools. It's actually really important. Singularity splits in half only when that singularity contains everything. And then that everything splits in half. It splits in half because of force and resistance. And this is the gnosis, the genesis, beginning of all life. It's the beginning of all consciousness. Force and resistance. Force and resistance, period. So, folks, please reach out to me, like and subscribe, share my channel. I've got a lot planned. I'm getting ready to start a scientific exploration of the creation story of the Bible. I'm also, working on studying, there's a lot of deceptive texts that are out there. The Nag Hammadi is one of them. I mean, there's a lot of bullshit. There's a ton of bullshit. There's a ton of lies, but lies do not change natural order. They don't change how shit works. How shit works will never change. The only thing that will change is you'll be deceived. We're also going to talk about more about where that deception leads. And I'm going to lastly leave you with this. The worst thing about being unaltered by a certain movement over the last couple of years worldwide that wanted to do things to your body against your will is that you have to pick up the slack at work when everybody else who has been altered are going to the doctor because of chest pains. Anyway, God bless.